All right. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Cassandra Taylor, and I'm the founder and CEO of Top Flight Defense Incorporated. And this evening, we have online Army retired Major General Paulette Risher. She's here to talk with us this evening about our mental health during this time of season. And without me going into more of it, Paulette, introduce yourself. You tell us more about you than what I can tell you.
Well, thanks so much, y'all, for having me here. I am 3 times retired. I'm an Air Force civilian retiree. I retired from the Army, as you said, with 34 years of active and reserve service. And I just recently retired about 6 or 8 months ago from still serving veterans, where I'd been the CEO of a nonprofit that's a Alabama's regional nonprofit. So it's very different having time and not having people trying to take your time all the time. And so there is good to retirement at that. It's also given me an opportunity, though, to continue to do things like this. And so this is my pleasure and honor to get to do this. And Cassandra, for all the work you guys are doing and the lives you're juggling to get this stuff done. It's pretty impressive. Cassandra, you're on mute.
Okay, so I have made you co-host, and you can now share your slide, and
Okay.
we can begin your presentation.
All right. So this is a fairly heavy presentation, but I put it out on my website. So Learning for the Journey, and I'll put the link in there. It's on the website, it's on my blog post, it's on the front page. So don't worry, I see some people are driving and some are still at work and some are just recovering from a busy day. So don't worry about note taking at all. So I'm going to go ahead and share this and see if we can see this. See. Figure out how to get you all back so I can see your smiling faces, or at least your names. Okay, are we good? Can you see that?
Yes.
All right, that sounds good. So the topic for this evening is crafting a life of greater well-being. And I really picked this crafting idea because I am a huge fan of this book called In Her Studio. It's a magazine and it's published a couple of times a year. It's ridiculously expensive for what it is, but I find it inspirational because it's got pictures of women who are artisans and have businesses and complex lives, and kind of shows their space. And it got me thinking about, how do we do that with our life? Not somebody telling us what to do, but how do we do it ourselves? And so that's what this is. This is the genesis of this presentation. Let's see if we can get this going here and get our page moving along. So I'm going to do a little stage setting. I'm going to talk about what the research and science says about well-being, what stands in the way. And there's a spoiler alert: our biology stands in our own way of happiness. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk about what it takes to craft our own well-being plan, and then just to give some practical advice. I figure about an hour. I don't want to overwhelm you with this. And as I said, I've got slides for you. So this can be a time it's a good time. It's not time this is not school, and this is not intended to be work. I try not to MSU, and that's make shit up. I tend to try to get to use research and to read a lot, and I'm an avid reader. And now that I'm retired, I have more time to be an avid reader. And so these are some of my source documents. And so what is well-being? I went out to Google. Google's your friend. And I put in model of well-being, and 5 billion hits, or some ridiculous amount of information. Everybody's talking about this, and every email I open has got some well-being thing in it. And so then I went and asked, I'm sorry, I had that on the wrong page. What do the models look like? And you got these things that are all kind of look alike. And there's a lot of them. Some of them are universities, schools, private practitioners, all sorts of programs of well-being. What they have in common, though, is all of them have multiple dimensions. And all of them, those dimensions are interrelated. And what that means is basically you don't have well-being or not. You may have well-being in one part of your life, but not in the other parts of your life. And so I think that's what I take away from this model anyway. So here's a couple of samples, and I'm not going to belabor this. This is not, you can read this on your own. The government's involved in well-being, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention of all the CDC. I co-chair the Alabama Task Force for the Prevention of Suicide Among Veterans. And we use the CDC guidelines for well-being because it's governmental. And it's very well written and well thought out. Popular press, like Psychology Today and any magazine you pick up practically have well-being articles. And one of the article I found in Psychology Today that I thought was really pretty good. What do we mean? It's just generally that well-being is just feeling good, feeling well. And it's a subjective feeling. There are a lot of academic programs involved. The one at Harvard is particularly good. And this guy here, who I think is that's a sexist, but he's a cutie, Tyler Vanderweel, and he helps he runs this program and is involved in the international well-being programs. He's really a smart guy. I really like his work. Here's the guy that's made all the difference in University of Pennsylvania. His name is Dr. Martin Seligman. And he's probably the most influential psychologist of the last 50 years. And what he did is in the late 90s, he was the president of the American Psychological Association, had won that position by the largest vote ever. And his challenge to the discipline was, we've spent all this time documenting all the terrible things that can happen to human beings, all the mental illness and all of the sadness and injuries to the way our brains work. And there's the diagnostic manuals, 1,200 pages of things that are wrong. And Seligman came and said, we don't spend any time talking about how to live a good life. What does it take to have a good life and to live that? And that is what he challenged people to do. And he came up with this model, PERMA, which people use or don't use, but most of those elements are common to other programs. One of these ladies I just stumbled across is this lady named Felicia Hubert, who's interested in psychological well-being. And she again talks about feeling good and about functioning effectively. But here's one of her things. People with high levels of well-being understand that it's not everyday happiness. Shit happens. Our days go up and down. Good things can happen and bad things. It's how we deal with that, as opposed to living this happy, you have to be smoking dope to live that kind of life. So let's be realistic about it, and then that the painful emotions and experiences are a part of the normal part of life. So these are basically the dimensions that people talk about when we talk about well-being. There's the social piece of this. There's financial. Do we have enough money to get along? Spiritual, environmental, which is really living conditions. Intellectual, what's our learning and our thoughts? Work, our physical health, and our emotional reality. And those are not in any particular order, just what order you see them in. Well, I think those titles are pretty universal. What you and I mean about that is not universal. It's unique. When I ask, is it Jeannie? When I ask Jeannie, what is her idea of spiritual well-being, your opinion's different than maybe Cassandra's would be. And that's okay. We don't have to agree on this. This is not a test. It's our lives. And I think that we just have to understand what we mean by being this, so that we know when we have well-being. So feeling good, not everyday happiness. I'm sorry, I went backwards instead of forward. All right, so if that's what well-being is, what stands in our way? What are the things that make it hard for us to have that sense of well-being, to feel good about life? I think many of the issues are biological. And let's see. I don't know if you're letting people in or I am, Cassandra, so we both are, I think, a little bit.
I
All
got
right,
you. You go ahead and present, and I'll let
all
them
right,
in.
all right. So what stands in the way of this? And I'm going to talk about some of the obstacles. I think it's our biology is one of the biggest things. All living critters have two basic survival functions that we have to be able to do. We have to be able to eat, and we have to prevent from being eaten. Now, we'd like to have sex and love too, but if you fail those first two, there's no sex or love in here. So, you know, you have to be able to do this. And our brains have developed two very distinct different hemispheres that take care of those two functions. When a person is going to eat, it requires us to look down, look narrowly, focus very narrowly, name things, say if it's edible or not edible. You have to grasp it and hold it and, you know, pierce it. Whatever that is, it's a very narrowly focused and downward looking. And that's our left brain. The other side of that is we also have to be looking over our shoulder at the hawk in the air, or the whatever the danger is that might be, which requires us to look very globally and broadly. And so we have that's our right hemisphere. And I'm going to talk just briefly about those two hemispheres. This is not something that's uniquely human. It's estimated that these two parts of brains, that the sea anemone, this thing that showed up on the earth 800 million years ago, has those two same functions and same brains, which to me is incredible. And that's equally true to the 8 billion modern humans on our earth today. So this is definitely a living creature thing. And I don't want to take your time tonight to go through in detail what the difference between those two parts of our brain are. I just want to hit the highlights. The largest part of our brain, the most important part of our brain, arguably, is our right hemisphere. This is where 90% of our thinking occurs. It's the seat of our beliefs and emotions, habits, values, intuitions. It connects new learning and old learning. It's nonverbal. It's on 24/7. This is what wakes you up in the middle of the night when there's a noise in the house that shouldn't be there. And it constantly scans for danger. And it tries to protect the body's energy reserves, because the brain only weighs 2% of the body's weight, but uses 20 to 25% of the energy. So this is the part of us that is our subconscious. It's our much older part. The modern human part, the executive function, the left brain, is where the adult behavior is, allows us to socially navigate. Smart, sequential, though, easily tired. It is the home of our habits and our decision making. And so it's the part of this higher order thinking that we're very proud of. It takes both of us to be happy, and well-being is made up of both. But when we're constantly on alert about things, this always over our shoulder, that's what causes us so much stress in our lives. And I'm going to skip this one. We also have in our we have a brain in our gut. You know, we use it in our language. We say our gut reaction was, my gut told me I shouldn't have done that, and I did it anyway. Or I should have listened to my gut. There's reason there that the enteric nervous system has almost 80% of the connections between the brain and your stomach. And so you have to listen to your whole body, not just your head. We have a lot of chemicals that circulate through our system. The endorphins, we've heard of the endorphin rush or the runner's high. Dopamine, that's for those of you like me who like to play online games and card games and stuff. That's our dopamine, because that's the pursuit chemical that's released, and it's very, very addictive. Serotonin is the feel-good chemical, and oxytocin is the love or cuddle hormone. And they used to think that that was only a woman's hormone, and because it's the hormone that's excreted when we breastfeed and be around a child. But what they've found now is that it's both genders, and they've actually done tests that if you have places where there's a hostile or toxic work environment, the oxytocin levels are lower among the employees than where there's a place where people work and are happy to be there and want to work there. So those are the pleasure chemicals. We also have the fight, flight, the other ones, the flight, fight, or freeze, the ones like adrenaline. I think we all have a sense of that. Noradrenaline is part of that cycle of that prepares the body to fight and to run and to heal if it gets injured. And the one that's really the bad thing on all of this is cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And I'm going to show you what this looks like. Something happens in our lives. And let's talk, I don't need to tell anybody on this call that's very challenging time we're living in. We have financial pressures and toxic politics and toxic chemicals, both social challenges, social media, 24-hour news, natural disasters, just a whole slew of things that are stressors. And our response is to be on 24/7 on alert. We narrow our vision, we get down, our social navigator kind of goes offline. And over long term, here's what cortisol can lead to: anxiety, depression, digestive issues, headaches and heart disease, and weight gain, memory and concentration. And so if we aren't careful about how we live and we just wallow in this fight, flight, and freeze and constantly on alert and this no sense of well-being, then that becomes our default value and our health suffers for that. And I tell you, it's very frequent. I think there's a lot of that going around. And I think all of us have to be careful that when we start falling into that, and it's really easy trap to fall into. A couple of other of our biological things is we are negative by nature. We have a negativity bias. Rick Hansen is the researcher in this area, and his quote is, "Our biology evolved to keep us safe, not happy." And so we don't have, and that negative emotions, we learn more, we attend to them more, we use them for information far more of negative than positive, and it's contagious. It's estimated that if you have something negative happen in your life, it takes 5 positive events to counteract that negative. So it's a very dominant thing. And even for those of us who tend to be optimistic, it's easy to get into this negativity cycle. I'm going to skip that one. I think this one's an interesting one, is that also it is a call to pay attention to things, because the human brain has evolved to hide from us those things we're not paying attention to. And this study that was done, it was an interesting one, and some of you may have heard of it. It was this, they had students that were challenged, half had black shirts on and half had white shirts on, and they were tossing a basketball back and forth. And an audience was tasked to count the number of times the basketball was passed from somebody in a white shirt to a white shirt. And so they did that, and about halfway through the experiment in the observation time, one of the researchers walked in a gorilla suit and walked through the middle of the group playing basketball and pounded on her chest and walked out. So after it's all over, they asked the observers, how many counts did you have? And as you'd expect, pretty much the same answer. How many of you saw the gorilla? 50% did not, because they weren't expecting that. And how much in our lives goes on and we're not expecting, we don't even see it, especially if it's something that happens to be good, because I think we just ignore the good. I am going to skip a couple of these in the interest of time. Here is probably my most encouraging thing of all of this research in the biology. And this is a study by Sonia Lyubomirsky and her team at University of California, Riverside. And they've studied happiness. And one thing they decided is that 50% of our happiness, our felt sense of happiness, is genetic. 50% genetic. And we all have known people who are Eeyores and are going to be unhappy at anything that goes on. And you have other people who are eternally optimistic, ridiculously so. But 50% of that comes from our basic genetics. And they did twin studies where they had identical twins separated at birth. They brought back together as adults and analyzed them as adults to see the commonality. And that's where that data came from. The other part of it says that about 10% of our happiness is based on life circumstances. Now, this is after the basic needs are met. So you have to be safe and you have to have a place to, adequate food, and you have to be in a place where, life's pretty stable. Then about 10% of it's circumstantial. But that leaves 40% with intention and attention. We can be 40% happier by just taking actions to take care of ourselves. And I think that's amazing. And even if you're an Eeyore, you're one of those people who, looks at the world as half empty, the glass is half empty and it's partly cloudy, and you can still be happier. And I think that's encouraging. Okay, any questions on that before I go on?
I don't see any in the chat on Facebook, so I would speculate that either people are just watching and taking notes, or they are okay with what you're presenting.
Okay, we'll make that an assumption. All right. So how do you craft this life of greater well-being? I think it's a process, and these are mine. This is MSU. This is make shit up, because my mind tends to operate in a process way. So I think, and I have a slide on each one of these, so I'm not going to belabor it here. But I think there's a mindset that goes with this. And it's back to being the craftsman, is that this work is close up and hands-on. This is not something that's abstract or it's not, but this is real work being done real time. It's messy and there are imperfections that are normal, that you get better at it over time. Mastery comes with practice, and that not everybody's going to love what you're going to do. And that's okay. They don't have to. And as women, we tend to be people pleasers. So often we're looking for validation, and people are saying that, oh, you did good on that, and that's wonderful. This is part of our well-being, is that you have to kind of do this on your own, but with support. So I'm going to hit just these few steps and not take a long time on this. I think the first thing you have to do is go through the different elements that make up well-being and make them your own, give them your own title. And for those of you who are like driving, I know, Gina, you're driving, so you won't be able to see this slide. I hope you drive, be safe. And, but what I have here is I have the label of one column with just the labels that you see on well-being, emotional, environmental, financial, blah, blah, blah. And then I think it's important that we make them our own. So put the label that you like, and that label that means something to you. For example, occupation makes no difference to me right now in this point in my life. Professional contribution does. So make the title something that's meaningful. And then go through and assess, how are you doing in each one of those? and I like this metaphor, and I stole this from Barnett and Evans' book, is of a gas tank. So are you full or are you empty or someplace in between? And I like that as an easy way of thinking about where I am in each of these dimensions. And on the actual form that's in the handout for you, to write down why, so that you can see this. And I did this for a group of, I don't know, about 40 women in a little while ago as a workshop. This was a half day workshop. And I had them not only do this individually, I had them post collectively what they had. And it was amazing how some people had so many things that they were struggling with. And then a lot of people were good in some areas. So it's very unique to who we are. And then just kind of write down a short why so you don't forget what you were thinking when you wrote that.
Now, Paulette, excuse me. I'm going to have to use that. I got a class coming up next year in January. So I'm going to need you to send that worksheet to me, because
it's in the handout. It's on the website that you can just download the whole thing.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Because if you can go back one slide to it though, right
Sure.
quick. In looking at it, I think that this right here, excuse me, is a perfect worksheet to analyze yourself and where you are in life. I think if, say, we do it at the beginning of the year, say in January, then we come back in the next quarter to see where we are. If we started on empty, are we moving to full in certain areas? I think this is a wonderful tool to have in our personal toolbox to continue to reevaluate ourselves mentally.
Right. I totally agree, Cassandra. I think that is exactly right. And it's not too complicated. That's what I like about it. It's just pretty straightforward. So once you have that assessment, what are the things when you look at that data, what is the most problematic area of your life today? And I think that some of them are not clean, but I can look at that and tell you health is my most problematic one. If that, and you will find things that you have to protect. I'm going to go back a slide. For example, I find it very important. Let me go back 2 slides. So let's look at connection, social connection. I want good social connections, and I'm willing to protect them as long as that they are healthy emotionally. So these things are interrelated, and I think there are times where we have to realize there are good things in our lives. We can work ourselves to death. If money's the issue, we can simply work ourselves to death and then have we have enough money, but we don't have any energy to do anything. Or we've broken all of our friendships and relationships because we're working all the time to make money. And you can see where these things are interrelated. And then I think here's the key thing. What one change could you make that would make a difference in your life? And it's one thing. It's not 10. Because if you make it 10, you're going to fail. Because nobody can do that. But what is one thing that if you can make progress towards, and usually it's progress towards, there's not a concrete thing, that would make a difference in your life. And then as you decide that, and only you can decide that, what's your plan? What steps can you take? What tiny steps can you take? You're much better off doing something that's incremental and make progress and make it a habit so you don't have to think about it anymore. Get it over to your subconscious brain to take care of it. It's just like you do the habits of driving and other things. And keep in mind that your life is your life. So I know that I get all excited about this and I'm going to do all this shit. No, I'm not. Because life is going to intrude on this. That's why you're much better off picking a single topic. something that will make a difference, and then take the first steps towards that. Reach out for support where you can. This is a good supportive group for each other. Seek out supporters and kindred souls, and stay away from people who are naysayers. And we all know people who are just, and not just Eeyores, that they're just painful to be around. Stay away from them. They don't have to be a part of this. And sometimes you don't have to do this alone, but you may choose to. You may be an independent soul that just decides I'm kind of that way. Most of these things, I want to do this myself. I don't want somebody evaluating my work and asking me questions. Well, did you go for a walk today? Go away. And so you have to make your own choice on this, and it'll depends on your relationships. And then continue to track and tinker. We achieve more when we keep track of what we're doing to show our progress or the things that are getting in the way of the progress. And if something's not working, fix it or change it. Make it so you are successful in this. And then as you make progress,
Paulette, you
your
are
life
frozen.
and you've done something
There you
worthwhile. Sandra, are you and I okay? Can you hear?
I can hear you now. It's saying that the internet is weak. I don't know if that's yours or mine, but you're freezing on my side.
Okay.
I see you moving, but just keep moving forward. It kicks in and then it kick right back out. So let's keep rolling.
All right. So here's some practical advice. And again, I'm not going to belabor this. But the first one I'm really serious about. You got to get off the rat wheel. You got to get off of this constant never having time for yourself. And you have to make time for yourself. You're worth it. You deserve it. You need it. And that's part of this developing a well-being. Find a place for quiet and be kind to yourself. Listen to while you talk to yourself. Listen to your own voice. Don't listen to others, including mine. You do what makes sense to you. Have some faith in your own intelligence. And stay away from social media on this stuff, Trust ourselves. This is, I think, an important thing, this idea of self-efficacy is our trust in ourselves. And I like Henry Ford's comment, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Which to me is true. It's a choice. We can either hunker down and be afraid, or we can choose not to be. We should focus on what we can control and influence and leave the rest to God. There is a really good tools here with your character strengths, and we don't have the time to talk about these, but there's a link here for a free exam, or that you can take
Paulette,
a free. Yeah.
we have until 7 o'clock, so you don't have to rush through. You in 26, you got 26 minutes. So
All right.
if you want to go into it and the group is okay with it, we can go into some of the characters, because I would love to discuss character groups and bring some of the listeners in if you want to.
Okay. So the character strengths that the tool that I use is called the VIA, the Values in Action Survey. And it has been taken by 8 million people around the world. So this is not the back of Cosmo magazine. And I like it particularly because the Army was the initial funder of it. Marty Seligman, Dr. Seligman that I talked about earlier, he was one of the people the Army hired to develop the character strengths and to build the Army's Master Resiliency Program. And this, this is a online, and take the free version of this. This does not, you should not pay for this. Just take the free version. Takes about 10 minutes. And what you get is a list of 24 character strengths. And on the next page, I actually have a picture of it. And it was interesting because in order to develop these, they went around the world and they looked for character strengths that are universal. And they looked at religious documents, they looked at myths and legends, they looked at stories, titles of books, and music lyrics. They really did wonderful work on this. And they found that there are top 5 strengths that will help you achieve your goals. And interestingly, they change over time because these are measured as states, not traits. So it's not a personality trait like introvert or extrovert or something like that. It's who you are today, and your own life circumstances will drive changes in this over time. I've taken this 4 or 5 times over the last 5 years, and every time it's different, depending where I am. For example, prior to COVID, leadership was probably number 15 on mine, because the role I had leadership in it, but that I was not the commander, wasn't in charge. So COVID strikes and leadership becomes number 1 or number 2 after spirituality, because now I'm responsible for the safety and security and data and delivery of services, and it's very back into that military mindset. So now it's back down where it should be, for an old lady that's retired. I don't have to do that. And your number 24 is always telling. So I would suggest that you take time and take this exam, go ahead and take this instrument yourself and think about what it adds and how you can leverage this for building your own well-being. I think you'll find it relevant. One of the other things, and I think this is particularly important and is really worth some time, Cassandra, is this whole idea of self-compassion. I think we are often our own worst critics. We have, and the lady Kristin Neff is the kind of the guru in this area. And I've just highlighted a couple of her thoughts, that self-compassion has 3 elements, and a first one is self-kindness. And one of the things she said that just really caught my attention was, we don't need others to respond with care and compassion in order to feel worthy of love. That thing about worthiness and to be worthy of love. And I think as women, I think we're very vulnerable to that. And I thought that was a powerful statement on her behalf. And in her book, she is very straightforward in her own life and disclosing the things that she was involved in. She was divorced and had a son, and so she's been the single parent, and she's talked about her struggles, and that has led her to this whole thing about self-compassion. Common humanity is that all of us suffer, and that rather than being isolated and letting our troubles in life isolate us, to understand that everyone's got stuff going on. And I had a friend, a lady that worked for me. She was in her other life, she was a retired Army, and in her other life, she was a pastor. And I had made a comment. I said, you just only have to you only have to look over your shoulder to see people hurting. And she looked at me, she says, no, Paulette, you just have to glance under your eyes that all people are hurting, and that this common suffering is part of being a human. And here's what that Kristin said on this: when we remember that pain is part of our shared experience, we escape from the rabbit hole of self-pity. And I think there is such wisdom in that. It is so easy to think I'm the only one with issues.
That's a powerful statement there. Say it one more time. That's powerful. Say it one more time.
Okay. When we remember that pain is part of the shared human experience, we escape from the rabbit hole of self-pity. Yeah, I think so too. That's one of the reasons I like her work. And let's see, and I missed a page. And then she is a real believer and advocate for mindfulness. And a couple of one comments she says in here, to give ourselves compassion, we first have to recognize that we're suffering. When we can't heal what we can't feel. And that to me is a pretty strong statement. And then she says, when life goes wrong through no fault of our own, we don't necessarily blame ourselves, but we go immediately into that problem-solving mode. And that's that, you know, that right, that left-brained. Oh yeah, we're going to solve that problem. Going to and we need to acknowledge that we're having a hard time, and that our pain is deserving of a kind response. So she has a lot of really good material. I think this whole idea of self-compassion. And then to resilience. And one of the things, this Richard Davidson, I had not heard about him and I just kind of stumbled across him. But one of the things he said is attention. He says, a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. And he advocates asking yourself, what are you doing right now? And where is your mind right now? And is it focused on what you're doing, or is it at someplace elsewhere? And I don't know about y'all, but mine's usually someplace else. How happy or unhappy are you right now? And I thought that was a really idea of this wandering mind, and you know, always that something in the background going on.
You know, Paulette, let's go back to that slide. It's funny how that resonates, and I'm so glad that you decided and agreed to come upon our Zoom with us tonight during this time, because it's like almost like every year, this is your platform. You come on and you bring us such a soothing voice about our mental health. And right now, we meaning this country is in such an uproar of everything that's going on, the wars, the threats of wars, the wars within your family. And to hear the things that you are saying right now, it's resonating so deep within me. And the part of the wandering mind is an unhappy mind. I promise you, people tell me, you just doing too much, Cassandra. You don't ever sit down, you just doing too much. And I had to tell someone that if I actually sat down and stopped doing all of these things, I would get in my head. And that's one place I don't want to be, because there's so much going on. And so I don't know about anyone else that want to say thank you. And I'm thanking you even before you get done, for bringing us this presentation to take a look at ourselves, to dig deep within ourselves and understand our point of unhappiness and wandering minds. I appreciate that so much.
Thank you, Cassandra. You're right. This idea of rumination is that, I want to go back a slide. I skipped over it, but I think it is relevant. This is a book by Ethan Kross, and it's called Chatter. And it talks about that inner mind. We talk to ourselves and we listen to what we say, which is one of his quotes. About 50% of our waking hours, we're talking to ourselves. And it's just the basic inner dialogue. You know, it's maybe about the past, maybe about the future, or what I'm going to do next, what I've got on my list, what my checkout is to demonstrate. And it's the what if situations. What if this happens? And what did I forget? And, you know, it's that narrative that runs all the time. Of that 50% of our waking hours, we're talking. 33 to 50% of that time is spent thinking about the past or the future, and not about the present. And I think that is a really, I don't know about time for you. I'll be thinking about something that happened over which I have zero control, or something that might happen over which I have virtually no control. And that we talk to ourselves at 4,000 words per minute. And that's not a typo. That was what he said. That was their research. So sometimes this normal narrative is part of who we are as human beings. It's part of our way our brains work. But there are times, especially when we're stressed up, when the stakes are high, when we encounter difficult emotions, that we really need to be on our best. That's when chatter is triggered. And it can start this rambling soliloquy, blah, 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 that noise in our head, the dialogue we have with ourselves. And it only, and here's his quote, our mind not only torments, but it paralyzes us. And this is why you don't want to be in your head. It can also lead us to sabotage. We can do something we know is not in our own self-best interest. So some of the things that he recommends, one is to take a third person perspective. And until I read the book, I didn't realize I'd do that. If I'm wound up about something, or I'm concerned about it, or scared about it, or whatever this is, I will call myself Paulette. Paulette, you can do this. Or we've been through this before. We've been through worse. This will help. And it's like calming yourself down and start talking to yourself like you would to a friend who is in trouble. And I found that that's really very helpful. There are things that we can do physically, like clean up our space, bring order to where there's chaos, that can help do this. But we all can develop grounding, habits to refuel your feet, reconnect with your senses. Kristin Neff talks about hugging yourself, even if you're just kind of holding your hand, reassurance, it's okay. And that's one of the ways that you can help counter this chatter that we experience. So character strengths, Kristin Neff's work is so good. Here's this thing about basic self-care, taking care of yourself. And we all know it. And we all know this, but we don't necessarily practice this. This is about getting control of your work life, so it's not controlling you. About sleeping, about not eating junk food. It's about worrying all the time or feeling alone. I said, we all know that that's not a prescription for well-being and good health. And yet it's so easy to fall into that as a habitual behavior. And sleep is a big one. It's estimated that probably 30% of Americans are sleep deprived. We just don't take the sleep, and that our brains need time to, our subconscious uses that sleep time to consolidate learning, to get our memories and our thoughts, and to strengthen our immunity. So sleep is not it's not a luxury. And then these are resources, and I've already mentioned the Values in Action. One of the ones I find very helpful is the Greater Good Science Center at Berkeley. They have, it's not the Well-Being Center, because the Well-Being Center is just trying to sell you stuff. But the Greater Good Science Center has a great newsletter they put out. It's free, it's a nonprofit, very good. And then I happen to like the Calm app. There are other ones that are free. Calm cost a little bit, but every night when I go to sleep, and this one thing about being a widow, so sleeping, my dogs don't care. I listen to this Australian mindfulness instructor as he leads you down his favorite beach in Australia. It's a 30-minute mindfulness tape. I don't think I've ever heard the end of it. His voice starts, and it's one of those things where you can just kind of go, done. So I guess to kind of end this up is I want to wish you all a joy, peace, joy, and well-being. And to thank you for your service, and I appreciate it. And not just your service in the military, but all that you're trying to juggle now to get to do well in life and to enjoy well-being. One of my favorite sayings is not all who wander are lost. And I feel like we all wander around, and hopefully this will help kind of ground you in this next year ahead. So with that, as I said, Learning for the Journey is my company's name. That's the website name. This is posted on there as, and you'll see it's a little bit different graphic, but the title's the same as Crafting a Life of Greater Well-Being.
Okay. Well, Paulette, whoa, that was some good stuff. And I don't
A lot of stuff.
yes, you know what? It was a lot of stuff, but in everything that you gave us, um, it was worth it. It was mind-boggling. It gave us an opportunity to think about ourselves and to really look at ourselves. I know it did for me. I don't know what it did for anybody else. Is anyone here on Zoom or Facebook have any questions or anything that they want to say to our retired Major General? Just, I love saying that about you, Miss Retired Major General.
Retired is
Young
the
lady
other
on
short
Facebook
part of
did
that.
say thank you. She said thank you. We had two ladies that had to drop off, but they thought this was an excellent presentation. Um, uh, oh, okay. One young lady said she have to let the presentation marinate. Yes,
And
yes.
she's cooking too.
Yes,
I
and
cooked
she's
last
cooking.
night, so I had
Jeannie,
leftovers.
Jeannie, you can unmute yourself and say what you got to say.
And I can't hear you, Jean.
We still can't hear you.
It looks like it's not giving us the
I don't know why.
don't know.
Marcia, I am recording this on so it will be uploaded onto YouTube. So if you would like to have it then, and then I'm gonna post it again on Facebook for anyone that missed it. Would that work for you, Marcia? Yep, got a thumbs up. Jeannie, I don't know what happened. Why you still, it shows you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. So just type it in the, if you want to, you could type it in the chat. So what I'm gonna do, I'm going to end the Facebook since everyone is just saying thank you, ma'am, thank you, ma'am. They loved it, they enjoyed it. So I'm gonna end it on Facebook, but I'm gonna keep the Zoom going, okay? So I have to do my commercial credits before I end it with Facebook. Thank you. Thank you all for tuning in to this month's presentation brought to you by retired Army Major General Paulette Risher, who is in our book. Her story is in our book, Why I Serve. You'll find that book on YouTube, on everywhere. Just Google it. It's on Walmart.com. Not Best, I was about to say Best Buy, Barnes and Noble, Amazon. If you Google it, you'll see it. But thank you. Continue to follow us. I love you all on Facebook. Continue to watch us. Continue to follow continue to follow Top Flight. Go to our YouTube channel. We're here on Facebook. We're on Twitter and we're on Instagram. I love you all and I thank you for participating.